The courtroom buzzed with quiet murmurs as the doors swung open. All eyes turned toward the young boy walking in, his shoulders squared, but his face betraying a mix of anxiety and determination. He couldn't have been older than 17, dressed in a wrinkled button-up shirt that was slightly too big, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. It was clear he didn't belong here, not in this courtroom, not in front of a judge notorious for his sharp tongue and even sharper judgment. Judge Barrett, an imposing man in his 50s with a booming voice and a reputation for cutting people down with a single look, glanced up from his notes. His thick glasses perched on the bridge of his nose made him look like an owl ready to swoop down on its prey. He frowned, clearly unimpressed by the boy's appearance. "Who's this?" he asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Did someone lose their paper boy?" The audience chuckled, the sound bouncing off the walls of the grand courtroom. The boy didn't flinch, though. He stood there, gripping a folder so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady but soft, "I'm here to represent myself." Judge Barrett's frown deepened, and he leaned back in his chair, letting out a laugh that seemed to echo for an eternity. "You? Represent yourself? What is this? A school debate team gone rogue?" The courtroom erupted into laughter again, but the boy remained still, his face calm. "Your Honor," he repeated, his voice a notch firmer now. "With all due respect, I believe I have the right to defend myself in this matter." The judge waved his hand dismissively. Sure. Let's hear it, Perry Mason. Let's see what kind of brilliance you've brought to dazzle this court." His tone made it clear he wasn't expecting anything close to brilliance. But then the boy opened his folder, pulling out a stack of neatly organized papers. His hands no longer trembled as he stepped forward, laying the documents on the desk before him. He looked straight into the judge's eyes, unblinking. "I may not look like much," he said, "but I assure you, I'm ready." The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued but unwilling to show it. "Ready for what, exactly?" The boy didn't hesitate. "To prove my innocence and expose the truth," he replied, his voice now carrying an unexpected authority. The judge smirked, still skeptical. "All right, kid, impress me." And just like that, the courtroom fell silent. No one was laughing anymore. Something about the boy's tone had shifted the energy in the room. Whispers spread like wildfire among the spectators. Who was this kid? What could he possibly know that would warrant such confidence? The boy began to speak, weaving through details of the case with a precision that left even the seasoned attorneys in the room stunned. His words were clear, logical, and compelling. He pointed out inconsistencies, cited case laws, and even called out procedural errors with the ease of someone twice his age. By the time he paused to take a sip of water, the entire room was hanging on his every word. Even Judge Barrett seemed to have softened, leaning forward slightly in his chair, his eyes narrowing as if trying to see through the boy's confidence. But before the boy could continue, the courtroom door creaked open again, and a man in a tailored suit walked in. He carried an air of authority, his presence commanding attention without a single word. The boy froze for the first time, his confidence wavering ever so slightly as their eyes met. Judge Barrett noticed the tension and couldn't help but smirk. Well, what do we have here?" he said, his voice dripping with intrigue. The boy didn't answer. His jaw clenched as the man approached, his every step measured and deliberate. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as the man stopped a few feet away from the boy and looked him over. "I see you've been busy," the man finally said, his tone calm, but loaded with meaning. The boy didn't respond immediately, but when he did, his voice carried a mix of defiance and fear. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. The man smiled faintly, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "And yet, here I am," he replied. Judge Barrett leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the drama unfolding before him. "Well, this just got interesting," he said, motioning for the boy to continue. But for the first time, the boy seemed unsure. His hands hovered over his papers, his mind racing as he tried to decide his next move. The room remained silent, the tension almost unbearable. Whatever the boy had planned, whatever secrets he was about to reveal, It was clear that this wasn't just a case anymore. This was personal, and everyone in the courtroom knew they were about to witness something extraordinary. The boy stared at the man for a moment, his thoughts hidden behind an expression that gave nothing away. It was as if he was trying to figure out whether this new arrival was a threat, an ally, or something in between. His hesitation didn't go unnoticed by the judge, who leaned forward, tapping a pen against the bench in an impatient rhythm. "Well," Judge Barrett prodded, "are we continuing, or is this where the drama ends?" His voice was tinged with sarcasm, but the curiosity in his eyes betrayed his growing interest in the situation. The boy took a breath, regaining his composure. He turned back to the desk and flipped through his papers, his fingers moving quickly but with purpose. "As I was saying, Your Honor," he began, his voice steady once more, "the evidence presented by the prosecution doesn't hold up under scrutiny." But even as he spoke, his eyes darted to the man in the suit. The tension between them hung in the air like a storm cloud. The boy's confidence had been shaken, but not broken. He pressed on, highlighting key points in the case, his words sharp and precise. The audience was captivated. People exchanged whispers, speculating about the boy's identity and what kind of story had led him to this moment. A teenager standing in a courtroom, facing off against seasoned lawyers and a notoriously hard-to-please judge, wasn't something anyone expected to see. "Objection," one of the prosecution's attorneys finally said, standing abruptly. She was a sharp-looking woman in her 40s, with a reputation for being relentless. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The defendant isn't qualified to." Judge Barrett held up a hand, silencing her. "Counselor, sit down," he said firmly. "I'll decide what's irregular in my courtroom." He turned back to the boy. "You've got my attention, kid. Keep going." The boy nodded, a faint flicker of relief crossing his face. "Thank you, Your Honor," he said. He took another step forward, holding up one of the documents he had brought. "This report contradicts the timeline presented by the prosecution. If you compare the timestamps here and here." He pointed to specific sections, his tone calm but persuasive. "You'll see that their version of events doesn't add up." The judge leaned closer, adjusting his glasses as he examined the document. The prosecutor's team exchanged nervous glances, their confidence clearly beginning to waver. But the man in the suit, who had remained silent since entering the room, suddenly cleared his throat. It was a small sound, but it cut through the courtroom like a knife. The boy froze, his hand still hovering over the papers. "Is there something you'd like to share with the court?" Judge Barrett asked, raising an eyebrow at the man. The man smiled faintly, the kind of smile that wasn't meant to reassure anyone. "Not yet, Your Honor," he said smoothly. "I'm just observing for now." Judge Barrett frowned but didn't press further. He turned back to the boy. "Continue," he said. The boy hesitated for only a moment before picking up where he left off. He presented his arguments with a confidence that seemed almost unnatural for someone his age, dissecting the prosecution's case piece by piece. His knowledge of legal terminology and case law was astounding, and it wasn't long before even the judge seemed impressed. But as the boy spoke, flashes of his past played in his mind. He remembered late nights spent in his room, poring over law books he'd borrowed from the local library. He remembered the endless hours of research, the debates he had practiced in front of the mirror, and the unwavering belief that knowledge was his greatest weapon. And then there were the memories he didn't like to dwell on, the ones that reminded him why he was here in the first place. The accusations, the whispers behind his back, the feeling of being backed into a corner with no way out. Those memories were the fuel driving him now. He wasn't just fighting to win a case. He was fighting to clear his name, to prove to everyone, including himself, that he was more than they thought. The man in the suit seemed to sense this. He watched the boy with an intensity that was almost unsettling, as if he were waiting for the right moment to strike. His presence loomed over the courtroom, a silent reminder that the boy's battle was far from over. As the boy finished presenting another key point, Judge Barrett leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "You've made some compelling arguments," he admitted, his tone begrudging. "But this is still an uphill battle, kid. Don't get ahead of yourself. The boy nodded. I understand, Your Honor, he said. But there was a quiet determination in his voice, a certainty that he wasn't done yet. The judge was about to speak again, when the man in the suit finally broke his silence. Your Honor, if I may, he said, stepping forward. The boy tensed, his hand gripping the edge of the desk. Who are you exactly? Judge Barrett asked, narrowing his eyes at the man. The man reached into his jacket and pulled out a card, handing it to the bailiff, who brought it to the judge. I'm an interested party in this case, he said vaguely. Let's just say I have a unique perspective on the matter. Judge Barrett glanced at the card, his frown deepening. This is highly unusual, he said. I understand, the man replied smoothly. But I believe what I have to say will shed light on some of the questions this court undoubtedly has. The boy's jaw tightened. Your Honor, he said, his voice firm but controlled, I object. This man has no standing in this case. The judge looked at the boy, then back at the man. Sit tight, both of you, he said. I'll decide how to proceed. The courtroom was silent again, the tension almost unbearable. Everyone was waiting to see what the judge would do, their eyes darting between the boy and the man in the suit. For the boy, every second felt like an eternity. He knew that whatever happened next could change everything. And as he stood there, gripping the desk, and willing himself to stay calm, he couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come.